It's kind of like it's like helping your mom set up an iPad.
I mean, I guess you're going to have to wait till you're about 50 to be in ministry.
Maybe don't put the church card in the Apple Pay. That'll mess you up.
Welcome back to the Practically Pastoring Podcast. My name is Frank, and I am glad that you are here. Our buddy Dell isn't able to make it because he's feeling under the weather, but physically, he should be with us right now at the Practically Pastoring Conference because it's happening.
I don't think anybody is listening to this podcast while they're at the conference. That would be they're like sitting in the back of the room, ignoring whoever's on stage, listening to an old podcast episode.
If they're traveling,
that's weird.
If they're traveling on Monday, they might be listening to this. They might be like, "Oh, I wonder what they're going to talk about."
Well, I might be listening to it on the plane right now.
Yeah. So we are excited because right now we're going to be
probably not
having the conference, and it's going to be super, super awesome. But today we are with you right now doing this podcast, and we're glad that you're here. Hey, in today's episode, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a lead pastor on a staff where you're leading people and you're pastoring people who are older than you. And so some of those nuances. And then we're also going to talk about a really practical conversation about managing spending as a church. And so I'm excited for that conversation. Before we talk about that, again, we are excited about the Practically Pastoring Conference, but we don't have to promote it anymore because it's already here. It's happening.
Yeah, I guess you could show up and we might have a t-shirt in your size. Yeah, if you're registering right now on Monday morning.
I don't think you can register, but you can.
If you're in the area, just show up.
You'll be fine.
Text one of us or reach out to us. We can probably get you in.
Slide into Frank's DMs.
But what we can say is we are thankful for our sponsor, Church Merch.
Merch for your church.
We are excited because right now we're probably getting ready to hand out this swag that we've received from them to the people who are coming to the conference, and we are very, very excited about this sponsorship because now not only is the podcast kind of suited to be able to get out swag, but our churches now have better swag because of Church Merch. So if you are interested, you need shirts, you need mugs, you need pens, you need journals, you need stickers, whatever you need for your swag, for your merch, for your church, check out Church Merch. The link is in the description. You can get more information. Tom Practically Pastoring sent you. All right, guys. So both of the questions today come from Reddit. And this first question is about applying for a senior pastor position, but they're younger than the associate pastor. So let me read it.
Gee, none of us have any experience with that, right, Jeff?
None at all.
Applying for a senior pastor position, but younger with less experience than the associate pastor. I've been asked by a pastoral search team to apply for a senior pastor position. They have 3 associate pastors and 3 additional staff members. I've served as an interim pastor out of seminary and then served 3 years as a college chaplain, They preached, led chapels, and served communion, but served on the preaching team while also in seminary. Pastoring a church would basically be their first time in full vocational ministry. I would be younger than 2 of the associate pastors and with less experience. I thought it was interesting they would still want me to apply for the senior pastor position despite these facts. Is that weird? Curious if anyone has a similar situation in coming to a senior lead pastor position as a younger person and or as their first call. So I want to add this caveat is, there's a reality that maybe even some of us, but many people are entering their first time being a lead pastor and they have associates who are older than them. But I want to kind of flex this even further because this is more of a real lived reality for almost every one of us. You're younger than probably your entire elder board, and you're younger than some of your staff members, and you also may have been on staff. You're younger and you're on staff with other staff people who've been at that church for longer than you, who are also older than you. So there's a lot of caveats here I think are going to be helpful for this conversation. But guys, what do you think? How do you lead when you're younger and less experienced?
I mean, I thought I was stepping in as a young senior pastor, and I think I was 34 when I took over. But Jeff, you were younger than me, and Tim, you were 29 when you took over. So, I mean, we across the board, I think we've all kind of experienced that here. You're not the one that hired yourself. It's like the church chose the elders chose you, or however, whatever the polity is in your church or in your denomination. There's a reason that you're in the role that you're in, and it's time to step into it and start doing the job.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with what Andrew said. You got to just kind of do the job that they hired you to do. One of the things that can happen sometimes is that when a new senior pastor comes into a church staff, everyone else tenders resignation. I've seen that happen a couple of times. It's kind of rare, but I've never seen the pastor accept all the resignations and just bring in a new staff. And I would say that you want to stay probably as far away from that as possible if you're the youngest guy on staff there. You want to probably move slower rather than quicker. I know I say that a lot, but you don't need to make big changes. But I mean, there really isn't like a nice, easy answer. It's tricky. It's tricky to lead people that are older than you because there is that dynamic, and you probably are going to, the role is going to expose insecurities in you that maybe haven't either been exposed before or haven't been exposed for a while. And so you need to have somebody. This is where the don't do ministry alone thing comes into play pretty strong, either there or maybe even more preferably outside of your entire church network and all of that you can kind of share some of that with, so you're not bearing that stuff alone, because it is really tricky and really like it you just feel really caught sometimes, like you don't know what to do because you don't want to. I struggle with feeling like I'm coming off as disrespectful, even though what I'm actually doing is just leading, because it's just tricky. It's like having a conversation as an adult child with your parents. That's a little bit what it feels like. And
but also it's like the conversation about technology where you actually know more than they do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's like helping your mom set up an iPad.
And like I'm actively trying to make sure you don't feel like I'm talking to you like I think you're stupid, because I don't think you're stupid. But at the same time, like, there are times when you're going to have to, when you talk about doing ministry with people that are older than you, you're going to have to correct people that are decades older than you are. And that is tricky. And so, the Bible does give some direction to this. We should speak to them like there are parents, basically, with honor and respect. But at the same time, you do fill that role. Like what Frank said is they brought you in, they asked you to be there, they hired you, whatever that process is. So now you have to sit in that seat and fill that role. And if you, on the front end, if you are like, I don't know how I can lead people that are older than me, I mean, I guess you're going to have to wait till you're about 50 to be in ministry, because there's going to be people older than you all the time, and you're going to have to just deal with it.
I think there's an interesting caveat here that if there's 3 other associate pastors at this church, there's a reason why they're not being asked to apply for this position.
I'd be interested to know how much older they are. Are these like guys that are close to retirement and they're bringing the young guy in and they want to mentor him? Or
they want someone who's going to be there for the next 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are these mid-career guys that are like going to be mad at you that they, I mean, I'd love to know what the situation is, because it could be a situation where the hiring committee, and not to knock this young guy, but the hiring committee is maybe making a giant mistake. And, maybe there's a culture, let's assume the best. But that's a great, and there's 3 other staff members. So they have apparently seen some leadership ability in you that makes you the person to want to lead 6 people on staff. That's not nothing.
And when I read this, my thing is they're hiring you to preach, because if you have 3 associate pastors, that means you probably have some gifted administrators. You have a youth pastor. You have someone who knows small groups or who knows assimilation forwards and backwards. They're hiring you to preach. And so lean into what it is that they're hiring you to do. You don't need to come in and tear out all the systems that are in place if you have the associate pastors there already. Do the thing that you do well and focus on that and empower your people to do what they do well. That's why they're in that role too.
So it's interesting because nowhere in the question does he say he's currently attending this church. He just said someone from the pastoral search team asked him to apply. So my guess is, I would say chances are either someone on the search team heard you preach, or maybe they got your name from a friend who said, hey, you should probably interview this guy. He's got the chops and could probably do a really good job. So I would say going into the interview, it's not weird. You asked if it was weird. It's really not that weird. That's not all that uncommon. There's also a very real possibility that you're not the only one interviewing for this job. So I would say, be humble going in and through this process. Even if
maybe the search committee said, hey, we want to interview one guy in his 20s, one guy in his 30s, one guy in his 40s.
And that's really not that uncommon either. We know of several churches in the area who that's the route they took. I would say glean as much as you can, learn as much as you can from this process, because you've already stated this would be your first full-time call. This is going to be a great process for you to go through. Whether you get the job or not, you're going to learn a ton in and through this process. If you get the job, that's awesome. Remain humble. Be humble. That was the best advice I was ever given as a very young lead pastor. Stay humble. But if you don't get the job, that's okay too. Like you're still going to learn a ton from this process.
That's good. Here's some more context I found in the comments of Reddit is that this person is 34 with 4 young kids, and the 2 associate pastors are in their late 50s.
Okay.
And
so they're not looking to become senior pastors.
Yeah, and the other is his age but single. And so maybe and we don't know what gender that person is or anything like that. And the support staff are all in their 50s also. So it's a situation. Yeah. If you're in your 50s. And you are, I don't know. I think there's people in their 50s.
Yeah, I know people in their 50s that they were a solo pastor like Jeff or I were, and they thought, you know what, this was great for a season, but I would rather be an associate pastor on staff at a bigger church. Yeah. And that's fine too. Here's what you need to realize about these people. They are going to cheer for you so hard.
Yep.
There is nobody on that list of people that does not want you to succeed. And if you're the guy, wonderful. And if not, that's okay too. But if you look at the churches that have really made huge turnarounds, and kind of made cultural impacts, most of the big well-known churches that we know across the country are either led by their founding senior pastors. So, Andy Stanley's at North Point and Furtick or whoever it is. But the churches that transition well, this is how they do it. You look at what Saddleback is doing. They went out and hired someone who was younger than all the staff so that he could be there for a bunch of years. Chandler's story is he was, how old, 27, 28, coming into an established church. Now, they were a church in decline, but still it was a church with some resources and some older people. They could have, and they're in Dallas. They could have gone to Southwestern Seminary. They could have gone to Dallas and said, hey, we want a professor to come and just preach on Sundays and we'll run the rest. But they went out and they got a young, energetic guy. So there's a blueprint for this that works. And those people, if they're going to be on your staff, they are heavily invested in your success.
It's good.
Good.
It's good.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a good opportunity to learn. And at minimum, don't be pastoring is a lot of you caring for people, and whether they're older than you or younger than you, if they know that you care about them, they'll submit to your leadership if you're making wise decisions. And I found the people I work with who are older than me, like Andrew says, are rooting for you, and your humility in that might be the very thing to win them over in that process, in that conversation. So good question. Hope this helps. And if you're listening to this, I want to encourage you to check our Facebook group. And there are other younger pastors your age who have been in your boat and would love to care and support for you. And next year, come to the conference.
I've got another thought of that. And again, this is hypothetical. We don't know how many people are applying or any of those other things. But find community with other pastors that aren't at your church. Yeah. I mean, again, those people there are going to be rooting for you. They're going to be cheering for you hard, but you still have to be the boss. One of the things that's great about this, one of the reasons that we do this podcast is not because we're making money or anything, but it's so that we have each other as a sounding board to vent to and to get ideas from. Find a community of other pastors who, again, don't need anything from you and are not getting anything, or you don't give them anything, they're not giving you anything. It's just a community of pastors. If you show up on your first day as the lead pastor and expect to have your work bestie like you did when you were the youth pastor, when you were the college chaplain or whatever it is, it's not going to work. There is a difference there. So find a community of pastors.
That's good. All right, let's go to the next question. Also on Reddit. The title is Managing Spending at Church. I'm wondering how people are here manage spending at their churches or how it's managed for them. I'm not talking about spending on outreach and things like that, but more on personal spending related to church business. Some examples: if you are going to General Assembly and need a book, hotel, how are you managing that expense? Your children's ministry director wants to buy a few books for children's church on Sunday. Should they use their own card and reimburse, or would you issue them a church card? Does your church issue a corporate card? Do you spend on your personal cards and then just submit receipts for reimbursement? How is all that tracked? I'm trying to figure out what to do for my church. I've heard of companies like Ramp or Expensify, but they're aimed towards businesses, and I'm not sure they'd be a fit for a church. I don't think we should be asking our staff, especially those who are part-time and volunteer, to charge something to their card and then wait for a reimbursement. But maybe that's just the way it's done. Any thoughts? And if you do issue company cards, are you using a company like Ramp or someone else to do it? For context, we're a growing church plant that is coming close to 100 members, 3 of us on pastoral staff, and then a few admins and volunteers. So this is interesting. I'm about to be a church planner. I'm trying to figure out, like, how does this all work? I've been in a church where every single dollar I needed to spend, I had to get approval for, and I had to get them to use their card to do it. I was at a church where this is the weirdest one. I was at a church that opened a bank account just for the student ministry, and every month they would put that monthly budget into that bank account,
just so you don't go over.
Just so I don't go over. And so if it declines, that means I don't have enough money. And if I want to like budget towards something bigger, I have to wait a couple months and stuff like that. And that's how I would buy that. And then
pizza night was always the first week of the month.
Yeah. And then
killer youth group that first week of the month. The rest of the month,
hey guys,
it's Numa videos, and that's about it.
Hey guys, we're taking the 4th week of the month off this month again because we don't have any money.
Yeah, and then we have a church where we waffled between the church credit cards to church debit cards, virtual cards, stuff like that. So guys, I'm interested to know, like, in your churches, how are you guys handling this? How are you handling this with staff or like staff volunteers? Tell me about it.
Well, I'll just tell you our experience at Lakeview. And Frank, you know this because we just got you a debit card. So we have church debit cards for our full-time employees if they want one. We have one full-time employee who hasn't requested one. So I'm just he prefers to charge the personal card, then get reimbursed. We have no issue with that at all. We do ask for receipts upon reimbursement. But we have a nice reimbursement process. It's set up through QuickBooks, and inside of that we use I think it's bill.com. And it's all direct deposit. So there's no like issuing paper checks and then you're having to wait weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a simple online procedure. So yes, we have volunteers that submit reimbursements. We have part-time staff who will either make the purchase with their personal credit card because they're okay with getting credit card points and we have no problem with them getting credit card points, or they'll just send me or Frank or our office admin a link and say, hey, can you guys get this for us on the church card? And we're saying, yeah, no problem. So there's a variety of ways to do this. We do have a budget in place. Every ministry has a budget. And at any time, that ministry leader can ask, hey, how am I doing? And then we let them know you're running over this month. You're under. We don't cut their funding. Honestly, I would want a ministry to run a little bit over. That way, going into the new year, we know, hey, you spent a little bit more money. That means you're going to need a little bit more in the budget for next year. Now, as far as just flat out, you have nothing in the bank, so you can't spend. That's terrifying and kind of crazy.
But you do have a policy, which I think every church probably has some sort of number here where it's like you can't spend if you need to spend more than $500.
Yeah, so whatever that number is for your church. For us, it's 500. It's been 500 for a long time. We've talked about changing that number as the church has changed, but you know what? I still kind of like it. So if we need to spend more than $500, for example, I've got a staff member who's requesting a laptop. She doesn't have one. She needs a new one. I'll go to the elders and just ask, hey, is it okay if we get this new staff member a laptop? It's over 500. So part of our policy is we get approval from the elders to spend over 500. So I have no issue. I think it's a safety mechanism too. And honestly, I think it can help protect a lot of areas if you have a policy like that in place.
And before these guys start, because I think this person probably wants a little bit of the minutia.
Sure.
You went to a local bank.
Sorry. Yeah. So Synovus. I don't know if they're local or
I've
national.
never heard of them until I moved down here.
Okay, yeah. So a local bank, we opened a business account. We shopped around, found the best rates, but it is a business account that they offer for nonprofits. And that's how we issue used to have credit cards. We moved over to debit cards. That's how we issue our debit cards to our staff members. We're also really careful about who we put on as signers on the account. I am technically not a signer.
I'm not a signer either.
And that is
do not want to be.
That is for our protection. So it might sound weird, but I'm telling you, if you have elders, however your leadership team looks, you can request this. You can ask them to not put you on as a signer. That way, there's some built-in protections for you there.
You just don't want a direct line between you and the checking account.
Yeah,
that's exactly it, Jeff. Yes, correct.
So I have a Chase Inc. card that's a Chase business card for the church.
That's credit.
Yeah, it's a credit card, and so we have a couple of those out at the church, but. Also, there's no issue with using personal card for stuff. We have a denominational meeting this year, and I think I got to go. I'm been dragging my feet in an ordination transfer process, and it is in Orlando, so I don't have to fly this summer. So I think I might go over there for a couple of days. And they are the conference is at a Hyatt. Well, I have a Hyatt card, so I get way more points if I put it on my Hyatt card than if I put it on the church card. And so there's going to be no issue transferring back and forth with the church. Now, I have served at a church that had a Chase Inc. card, and I think it was a pretty good cashback. And the goal of the church, and it was, hey, we get that not everybody wants to use the church card. They would rather do reimbursements. We want everyone to use the church card because every cent that we get in cashback goes into flights or things like that, so that the pastors had more margin when it came to conferences or continuing ed, things like that. Because if you're going to a conference that's $200 for the conference and $400 for the hotel, but it's going to cost you $500 to get there, well, they would rather a few times a year say, hey, we have this extra money in cash back to buy plane tickets. And so I get that as well. But I also, the first boss that I ever served under had a Disney card that he got all of his youth ministry expenses to get his family Disney points. And I remember thinking, wait a second, that feels like it's cheating. But no, he just had a higher credit score than I did because I was 22. And it worked out really well for him. So what I will say is with the reimbursements, sometimes the paper trail, and I feel like the older, more denominational churches, they have systems that are, fill in this form and you need everything itemized. The IRS takes your credit card statement as a receipt. So you don't need, a receipt for every lunch that you're at.
But here's the kicker, Andrew. If your accountant is trying to pull the funds from specific accounts, it would be wise to then what you could do is take that credit card statement and then by each purchase, just list the line item. Yeah. This was youth ministry account 770. This was for worship 721. Whatever those numbers are, that way your accountant is not, oh my gosh, here's 72 purchases. I have no idea how this comes out. So there is still going to be some work.
I think some of the smartest ones that I've seen, I don't do this. Basically, if I'm buying plane tickets or hotels, something that I'm going to get more points on, I'll put it on my personal card. But I've got buddies who they have a personal credit card just for church expenses, and they have their 4 or 5 highlighters. And so when they turn it into the admin or whoever it is that's doing it, hey, green goes to this account, yellow goes to this. Yeah, and so they highlight all of the things so that the budget is kept in track with, but they still maximize their points.
And every church is going to be a little different here.
And if your church has a policy of we only want you to use the church card, then fine. But if the church doesn't, then man.
Our office admin prefers not to have it all wait until the end of the month. So as each purchase comes in, she will shoot me an email and just say, hey, what was this for? Give me the account and receipt. And so I'll quickly respond with an email. And that's super easy for me. I never get behind. I don't have to track everything. Most of my purchases are Amazon, so they're digital receipts anyways. So it keeps it super simple.
Or lunch.
Lunches.
With the Chase Inc. card, this probably is like maybe
that's what we have
inside
too.
baseball.
We have a Chase Inc. card too.
Are you able to transfer your points to your own personal points?
Yeah.
So like if
I think for the church one, I don't know because our there's different kinds of Chase Inc. cards. Our church account is a cashback account, but there's other Chase Inc. cards that are points, and with those, that's more like if you have a personal business that you're allowed to transfer stuff to. Yeah. There's some different things for nonprofits. I've never worked at a church that had a point earning card?
James Saban, he's a friend of the podcast. He is also kind of like their executive pastor in terms of like he deals with this stuff. And the rule is everybody has the credit card, but all the points he gets to choose where they go to, and he uses that so that he can like have big prizes for the student
That's
ministry.
awesome.
That's cool.
And so he basically turns all the points to Amazon, and uses that like big like $1,000 or whatever to be able to buy stuff for the student ministry.
Yeah.
So the youth ministry budget gets shrunk.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've seen that before. Also, Bill.com. I know you guys use it. We use it as a way to like pay people and stuff like that. They have a nonprofit section where they can give you a card, and like the back end can do like what's it called? Put payments towards accounts. So like if I'm like reconciling all my receipts, I can upload the receipt to bill.com and then say it goes to this account, and
That's
then the
sweet.
accountant can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what my last church did, and it was just like the best process. He was talking about Expensify. I remember like personally downloading Expensify just to organize my life, but like if you're not as an organization doing it, it's kind of like an exhausting task.
It's annoying,
you might as well
yeah.
just be using spreadsheets.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
But like from an organizational level, if you can commit to like a bill.com or I guess Expensify or Ramp, whatever that is, like I think that's when it makes sense. But anyways, Jeff, what do you guys do at your church?
Yeah, we have a Chase Ink card for the church. We have one account, and then there's like 3 cards. I would say one kind of principle is like you should have as few cards as you can get away with. You don't just want to give everybody cards, so you want to keep
You don't
that
want cards
too.
floating around out there.
Yeah. You want to keep them as minimal as you can. In terms of like, going back and putting expenses with certain accounts, you can actually just do that right in the like online Chase Ink. You can log in and just like put notes on the actual transactions. That's another way to do it. But a big thing here for this guy who's a church planter is get you a good treasurer, buddy. Make sure that you have somebody that's gifted at this. That's not you. Again, you want to keep levels of separation between you and so the advantage of a church credit card, especially for like a solo pastor, is that it's not a direct line to the church's like money. Yes, it's to a credit card, but like it's not a direct line to like the church's bank account. So you should build that kind of in there. So yeah, we just have a Chase Ink card, and we use it for things. We don't have a set policy on a dollar amount, but I just kind of feel I can feel the when I need to say, hey, just FYI, I want to let you know. So recently we had a piece of audio equipment go down, and I just cashed in some relational capital, I guess, and just spent, it was like $900 to replace it, which for a small church is a big purchase. And so it was a digital snake. So like our audio snake went down, and the best thing to do. So I actually bought it from another church. So, and then in the busyness of life, I didn't mention it for a couple days to the treasurer, and he was like, "Why did we pay this Lutheran church $900?" And I was like, "Oh, that's actually, I bought a piece of equipment that went down. It was half price. It was like a good thing." And so, but yeah, you just want to have open communication. Okay, so a couple of examples. If you're going to General Assembly, need to book a hotel, I'm putting that on the church card. That's how it works for us. We obviously know that's coming up. Everybody's aware. It's going on the church card. And probably most of my meals while I'm there are also going to be in the church card. Like that entire trip is going to be expensed. Children's Ministry Director wants to buy a few books for Children's Church on Sunday. For us, that's going to go on the church card, or we're going to use our like Amazon Prime account, which again is tied to the church credit card. I would not have them be trying to get a reimbursement. In terms of what gets reimbursed, it's things that are like out of the ordinary expenses. So somebody bought something, let's say something broke, and one of our members was like, "Hey, I'll go pick that up and I'll just get a reimbursement." I don't love our reimbursement system right now, but it's the one that works for us and works for our treasurer. So we just have a Google form that we created, and people can just go on there, and it's directly, sends the email to the treasurer, and he gets that, and he cuts an ACH check. So, they have to put like the amount. There's this place where they can put a picture of the receipt if they want, what account it's going to come out of, if they know that information. Sometimes the treasurer just does, he knows. And then their address and their name, and then usually about a week later, they'll just get a check in the mail, and they can deposit that. So I would rather it be direct deposit, but there's a whole lot of stuff you have to go through. And basically our reimbursements only happen once in a while.
Sure.
Regular stuff is just getting put on a church card. So it would be annoying to have to go through and get banking information from people to reimburse them for things. So that's the way we do it. And it works okay. Works fine.
I wish since this guy's a church planner, I wish I knew the answer to this question. I just messaged a friend of mine who's a church planner also, who said a lot of church plants, there's these like organizations, like third-party companies that will handle like your church accounting, and you like send them the receipts, and it's good for when you can't do that in-house.
You can get a CPA or a bookkeeper too, just like a local to run that for you.
That's true too.
And then those reports could go to whatever like board you have as a church planter, whether that's a denomination or whoever's got that like ecclesial authority over you, you want to make the connection between the money and them.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that this organization is like specifically work with churches, or maybe specifically church plants. I still think there's a vision. I think that Tim and I, we're thinking about like with the network of churches that we're trying to have here, like if there was like a way where we could like the churches could all hire a CPA or some kind of accountant to help serve all these churches. One single church can't hire a full-time accountant, but if multiple churches said, hey, we will give you our stuff, and that could be a full-time job, assuming they can handle all that, like that would be like a beautiful gift to like a network of churches. But yeah, I mean, I think when it I like the boundaries we're here. Go with as few cards as possible. Something like books. You mentioned this, Jeff. Like having a common Amazon login for Amazon purchases is a good thing. Where it's like, hey, if we're doing a lot of things through Amazon, let's just use one card, and then everyone can make the purchase.
You can set up a nonprofit account with Amazon. That you should definitely do, because I've had multiple times when I've had to like change accounts because the church, my previous church, they didn't have an Amazon account, so I would use my Amazon account, and then they got nonprofit on it, and then I was going to leave like, oh well, this is our nonprofit account. So set up just a standard, this is your church's account, and when you do that, make sure you're logged in or logged out if you're putting joke things on Christmas lists. Otherwise, everybody on the church staff will see the plus size men's underwear that you're putting on your brother-in-law's Christmas list as a joke. So I'm just saying, be careful.
Yeah. And one thing we haven't talked about is if you do have a card, how to pay back to church for mistake personal expenses.
It's happened.
Yeah, it happens all the time. The one issue is one church I had, my church card was the same color as my personal credit card, and I was like, I would just pull it out, and I'm like, oh, and it's tapped, so it's so fast.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, dang it. And so
maybe don't put the church card in the Apple Pay. That'll mess you up.
yeah, for sure. So, anyways, hope this is helpful. This is that was insanely practical, and hopefully this practical conversation can benefit you. Again, join our Facebook group. We are excited because right now the Practically Pastoring Conference is happening, and we hope to do it again next year. Till next time, till next week. I'm Frank Gill.
I'm Jeff Simpson.
I'm Andrew Larson.
And I'm Timothy Miller.
This is Practically Pastoring. See ya.